Hello, it's Talking Reds. Talking Reds is back. That's exciting, isn't it? It's John Gibbons, Neil Atkinson and Josh Sexton here, and Talking Reds is brought to you by NordVPN. And NordVPN have been partnering with us for a while on our audio content, and now they've brought back Talking Reds. What a firm. It's
what they wanted to do. They wanted something specific. They wanted something spectacular. They wanted something that rings out, and here we find ourselves. We'll have more from them and how they're making the internet better soon. Also in part 2, we're going to be answering your questions, so get your questions in now in the comments. Josh Sexton is here to ask those, to put them. You're the representative of the people.
You're smiling already, like some belters coming in.
Well, I basically put on Twitter before for people to send in the jokes so that I sound funnier, and obviously people have tried to stitch me up, so they're sending in their worst jokes. Shall I read some of these bad jokes?
Go on.
So Boulders153 says, one for Josh. What do you call a moose with no name? A non-a-moose, obviously. Lachlan Murdoch comes in with what do you call a pony with a cough? A little horse. That feels like one of the ones on the back of a penguin. Will Mottram says, what do you call a man wearing 2 coats standing in a cemetery? Max Bygraves.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure the significance of the 2 coats there, but Masso has been on. He says, why can't Stevie Wonder see his mates? Because he's married. Should have read to the end of that one before I got to it.
I like it.
And then more to come, more of this sort of thing.
Oh, there we are. Stay tuned. Ben Northern made up with this. There we are. Okay, let's get on to the Reds. First of all, how you feeling post Sunday? Because I've not really seen you.
Dreadful. I'm like. What was tough to take was they were really not very good, full stop, but also they were not very good for 45, and then I actually think it became a bit of a nothing game, and not quite like 2 minutes, you were in the grounds, you were probably saying something similar, it was about 2 minutes from when I first went, we can win this, in a mad way. We don't deserve to, but we can absolutely steal this, is when the error goes in for the second. And listen, there's loads of ways you can say, well, you'd rather it was a one-off error, and the whole thing feels very, very outliery in loads of ways. I've done some stat stuff this morning with Josh Williams, and it's come up, and we've talked about the way it feels very outlierish, like the size of the expected goals Liverpool concede, but that's because the 2 chances, 3 if you count the Havertz thing and then the save, they like equal practically 2 themselves. You've just got to kick it into an open goal, if you see what I mean, on one of them. And Saka's not that far away from something very, very similar. So, there's madnesses to it, but they were good, and it's worth saying that, I think they can win the Champions League, and I know that was the tone of a lot what was said post-match by us, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're celebrating it as much as they were, is I think he knows the significance of that he's able to say to them, they're one of the best teams in Europe, and they didn't land a glove on you. Well done. We can do this.
Following up from the fact that they beat Man City at home as well.
Yeah.
We can get results against anyone here.
We'll see what happens away from home, but I think that's, I think you've got to allow other teams having their journey, and they were on their journey, Arsenal, and that's where that has been a part of their journey. Now, as you say, there's the City game, and now there's that one against us, where also he'll be feeling a little bit like we went ahead at Anfield. I actually think they were lucky not to get beat at Anfield, because I think that we really exposed them between 45 and 70, but we don't score to make it 2. They were the better side first hour of the cup game, certainly first 45 of the cup game, but we go on and win it. So I think all in, it was enormous for them, and I did not resent any amount of their celebrations. I actually thought the photographer thing was pretty cool, and I didn't understand why everyone was acting like this is ridiculous. I also thought Odegaard played ever so well, and he was me worried before the match. I thought he was MOM by a mile. All in, just infuriated whilst doffing your cap to the opposition, and just thinking to yourselves, right lads, you've had that one now, you don't get another one. That's the way it works. You've had one, you're not having another one, and then hopefully that'll be the case.
Do you wish you were playing tonight?
I don't, to be honest. I sort of alluded to this on the free show today. I think this is the perfect week for Liverpool to sort of get that one out the way on the training ground. I think there was for me a couple of sort of mentality issues in the way that Liverpool approached the game against Arsenal. I think particularly in the second half, like the adversity that they didn't respond particularly well to, and I'd quite like to just sort of have them all together, get a couple of lads back in sort of training and back together and back for the game against Burnley at the weekend, which I think comes at the perfect time, like it being a home game, almost it being a Saturday 3 p.m. as well. I think that there's a load of ingredients there which really help Liverpool, and that it doesn't feel like we're going into this another sort of massive game. Like I think, for example, if we were to be playing Luton away this Wednesday, like Luton would be a horrible place to go to after just having your worst defeat of the season. It would be a ground that's up, Luton would be dead up for it, and it would end up being a big scrap. And I just think Liverpool don't need a big scrap at the moment. They almost need the sort of,
Yeah.
you know, the easier game at Anfield, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I always felt anyway like it was a bit of an end of a run when you get a block, that one, against Arsenal regardless. And I think also the questions around fitness of a couple of them, including players who featured against Arsenal, I think the idea of another week and then a bit of a reset and then they go. That run starts with that game against Burnley, and arguably, I'd say we don't know those Europa League games yet, but arguably the run starts with that game against Burnley and it finishes with what we hope is an FA Cup 6th round game, and then that's the end of that block, and then there's an international break. I feel like this is one of those things where it's its own block, it's done, and now you get to say, okay, that was that done. It went pretty well, and then it went really badly. We get to start again, and hopefully it'll go pretty well, and then we'll hit that March international break in the best possible nick, and within that there is that game against City that just looms so large.
Absolutely. Neil there mentioned a couple of injured players. Well, there's a few injured players at the moment. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple of them now. The first one is Dominik Szoboszlai, and it's really made me laugh all this because it feels like he's got this injury and then he said, can I go to Hungary to see me mum? And everyone's gone, yes, sound. He's gone back. And everyone in Hungary's running their mouth like I saw him in the supermarket. He looks done in. He's finished, basically, to someone else going. Now I saw him. He was sound. He was doing high jump. Like it feels like the whole of Hungary, Neil, has got something to say about poor Dominik Szoboszlai. He's probably just nipped home to sort out to run an errand.
I like the idea though that it stems from his mum. Dominik's come back, looks terrible. I don't know what to feed him over there.
Yeah.
Not himself. Then a couple of days later, he's in fine nick, fine fettle. I like the idea that it all stems literally from a couple of phone calls. I don't think you're going to know until he's back under Liverpool's aegis, as it were. And I think that the manager will lay it out in the press conference before the weekend. I think that we did miss him a bit against Arsenal.
I thought massively, actually, yeah.
And I think that's... I don't think we necessarily would be missing them for the game against Burnley, but I think that there's a couple of them where I think the game against Arsenal was much on a sort of a physicality, dynamism, madness front, if you know what I mean. I think that we missed an element of 2 or 3 footballers, and then we missed a couple even a couple who were playing, we just weren't quite at their best, and I think that's a fitness thing. So I think the sooner he's obviously back in the fold, the better, but we know they're not going to rush him. They're not going to rush him back, and also they sort of don't need to. You know, I think that there's games on the horizon where Liverpool can marshal the troops a teeny little bit. I'd love to have them for Brentford, because Brentford are massive, but also Brentford have not won many games recently and have conceded a lot of goals, so we should be all right, but I would love to have them for Brentford. But apart from that, I'm quite, I think it'll be okay to have a period without him. I include the final in a funny way, because we've seen that Chelsea had a little bit of a mess, and you always want your best players available. But I feel as though you want Szoboszlai at his best for that game against City. That's the one you want him absolutely in peak nick for. That's the one where he can have a massive impact. And it's also without reminder as to where the steps up are now. I think we've seen enough across the last few weeks. Newcastle were good last season, but now, for a variety of reasons, they don't look on a par with the idea of a Newcastle game versus a game against either Arsenal or City. It almost feels like a different sport, and that sounds really harsh, but that's how I feel about it. So I think that you want your best players for when you're going to get those sorts of affairs.
It's funny, isn't it, Josh? Because until you're sort of missing them, sometimes you don't see who's there. But it's all about other people stepping up, basically, isn't it, in key situations. So at the moment, when Neil's talking about this run of games and not missing Szoboszlai, I'm like, we might change our mind on Saturday sort of after we see it. But then if Harvey Elliott comes in, plays really well, or we do a bit of a rejig in the midfield, put Endo in, we've seen a bit of chat about that, push McAllister up. Until you sort of see it, you don't sort of relax really. And I remember earlier in the season, a lot of us were saying, well, if Trent misses a game, we've had it.
Toast.
We're basically, Then Conor Bradley says, hold my NordVPN. What's ring? And suddenly people are like, don't put him back in the team. So we're fickle souls.
Yeah, we are, and it's a tough one, isn't it? Because I'm almost looking at the weekend now and being like, I'd rather be in a situation where I'm playing somebody like a Gravenberg. There was someone who put it in the comments, and I was trying to search for it, but I've lost it, so I'm already doing terribly on the producing the comments thing.
It's all right. It's first week.
Texting if it was you. Just put it in the comments and I won't read it again. I'll take it as my own opinion. Yeah, I'd like to see Gravenberch starting again to sort of get some of that rhythm and sharpness into his legs. I think you've already seen at times this season that he's a player who, massively benefits from rhythm. He was able to get a little bit of it earlier in the season when he was sort of starting all the Europa League games, and that led to a couple of starts in the league as well, which was eventually sort of curtailed. But I think there's a situation where you can play quite a lot of the lads who maybe are lacking in sharpness, and there's another comment from MK there which says we missed our right side and Arsenal targeted the right side, and that's sort of where I ended up landing on the game at the weekend, was that it was too much change on the right hand side. It was just basically three lads who had absolutely no rhythm in Trent, Gakpo and Gravenberch. But I think Burnley aren't going to present the same challenge as Arsenal. They're not going to have the sort of wideness.
To find our way into the game.
Exactly, yeah, and it's not going to be, up against someone like Martinelli, who's dead dangerous. I know Burnley have got fast lads up top, but no one with the quality of Martinelli, no one with the sort of quality combined with wideness in midfield of Jorginho, what he brought to that game. So I think, like you say, it gives you an opportunity to sort of build into the game more, beyond the ball more for one as well, because that's where I think Gravenberch particularly struggled at the weekend, and sort of worked back from there. So yeah, Szoboszlai not playing this game is fine, but like Neil says, I think there's some physically large as well as just large in a metaphorical sense challenges to come, and I'd like him to be fit for them.
Absolutely. Someone who immediately improves the right hand side is Mo Salah. Yeah. He was showing videos of himself sort of running a bit. Again, we'll find out more in the press conference whether he's available to start this game or on the bench, but he does add something immediately, and I'd love to come back flying. And all the stuff around the national team is just, I'm just a bit worried that it might become a little bit of a distraction for him. I think he does put a lot of it on himself, and I think there's been a bit of noise sort of the last couple of months, from various people, and now one of them is his manager, which is slightly annoying. And when I saw it, I was like, well, you just tell him to shut up or whatever, but this fella's Egypt's top scorer. Yeah. So he's in held sort of great esteem as well. So when I was just sort of looking at this, I was just thinking we could do without this, Mo could do without this, and you just want him to be able to come back and focus on Liverpool, and anything sort of like this makes me slightly concerned, or maybe I'm wrong, because he shuts out a lot of noise, Mo Salah, to be fair to him.
I think he has a lot of noise to shut out. You worry that there'll be a straw that that does him in at some sort of point in the process. I don't think it's necessarily this. I think it's a difficult situation. I think the Egypt situation is in general a difficult situation. They've got this fella who's absolutely incredible, and then there's a couple of other quite good players, and then there's just this drop-off. Yeah. And everything that goes on around sort of where an AFCON is, but then AFCON itself feels like it is the most unpredictable of the international tournaments as well. Last time out they got to the final, but they got there playing really miserable football that I think was a slog for everyone who was involved in it, especially Mo Salah in a way. So you just end up in this situation where I don't think it's ever been plain sailing for him or for them, and you sort of wish it was a little bit more plain sailing. I wish there was sort of a genuine expectation in a really weird way, as odd as this is to say, because we want the player back. But they're one of the four best teams in Africa. They'll get to the semis. They'll qualify for the World Cup. They're one of the four best teams. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I almost feel as though everyone would find the process smoother if the process was smoother. I know that sounds a bit mad, but I just feel like it's this constant sort of little bit of of randomness that gets dropped in. He's been putting up with it for ages, and I'm sure this will be no different. And I'm sure also the flip side of this is that this fella who's took over the manager's job, well, he can't alienate his best player week one. Maybe he can have a go, but I don't think he'll want to do that. You'd like to think he wouldn't want to do that, so there could be conversations about it. I think with Mo, I think the most important thing is that he's physically tip-top when he gets back on the pitch. Because what we need, I think, the best way he puts it all behind him is that he just starts scoring goals for Liverpool and feels as though there's trophies on the horizon. So I think he's, in a way, as much as I'd like him back, again, it's Burnley first, I'd like him to be in really, really good shape. Yeah. And I think that's, for me, that's the priority. How can we make sure he's in really, really, really good shape?
Well, as ever, all the best pre-match content will be on the Anfield Wrap for subscribers. So you'll have the pre-match warm-up for audio, which should be out sort of Thursday night. You'll have the Friday show hosted by Neil, which normally comes out Friday morning, which looks ahead to all the Premier League action, not just Liverpool games, because there's obviously some massive games across the weekend. And then, straight after the press conference, you'll be higher. It's the team talk.
The best of the pre-match content, I'd say.
Well,
not being biased.
It's certainly the best opening word in post-press press conference history, I would say, than anyone's ever done. So yeah, subscribe to the Anfield Wrap, download the app and get stuck in. It's going to be a brilliant end to the season, isn't it? Liverpool fighting on all four fronts, and we'd love you to share the journey with us. Just finally, before we have a bit of a break, I want to talk a little bit about Xabi Alonso at Leverkusen, because he has another big win last night. Leverkusen have another big win, it has to be said. They're into the semi-finals of the German Cup. They beat Stuttgart, who were flying themselves this season, a third in the table. They had to come from behind twice. They feel like they got real spirit. They're still unbeaten in the league, and my slight worry about when all this came out was that, like, I hope it's not a distraction for them, because you sort of feel a bit bad about that sort of thing. You're not quite as Liverpool obsessive to what about someone else's season. They had a draw at the weekend where they struggled to break a team down, so nice to see Leverkusen get the big win. Nice for Xabi as well, and he's certainly doing everything in such an impressive way at the moment, and you can see why he is sort of favourite for the Liverpool job, because although he's inexperienced in some ways, although I think it is slightly overblown, but I think what he's doing with this Leverkusen side and the spirit he's got from them, and the fact that they're obviously playing with quality as well, but also just that real sort of never say die attitude that they've got as well, and how he spoke after the game about that. I was like, oh, it's a bit of a Liverpool manager, that.
Yes, that's been the sort of interesting thing so far, really, is hearing the way that Xabi speaks, seeing the sort of charisma that he operates with. Like, the charisma is probably the biggest thing for me, really, because I think that's one of Klopp's sort of greatest strengths, and it's not to say that Klopp is not also a great football manager. Like, I always think back to that Mel Reddy piece a couple of years ago. I'm not sure who it would have been for now, probably one of her sort of earlier outlets, but it was talking about the fact that Klopp's not all just sort of big hugs. There's real sort of tactical nous to what he does, and he's talked about having assistants who are the brain and the eyes for him and things like that in the past, and obviously Linda's has been huge from in recent years. But for me, the way he captured us all as fans, and I think that's the most important thing for the next manager to do, is by his charisma, basically, is by being a great leader, is by taking us along on the journey, and that's where I think that's an important skill that Alonso does have. There's a comment here from someone asking if we think Ruben Amorim is a perfect replacement for Klopp. I'm sort of sceptical on coaches like that who are sort of coming from other places in European football and stuff. I'm sceptical on people like De Zerbi, who I don't necessarily think has the charisma. I think he's a madman, which maybe works to some extent. Ange has got the charisma, but again, I'm sort of a bit worried about almost the lack of evidence he's got in the Premier League and of sort of managing top European teams, and that's to do no disrespect to Celtic at all, but Celtic weren't having big European campaigns under Ange. So I think Xabi sort of works in all those senses. He covers a couple of bases for me, and also there's a big thing for me of, like, he's already got that affinity to the club, and I think that we can expect a period of transition here. We can expect some sort of level of downturn, because we're going from one of the greatest managers in Liverpool's history, and I don't want to get 6 months down the line and be looking at De Zerbi and being like, I love the last fella and I think you're a prick. I want to be looking at Xabi Alonso being like, it doesn't matter that we're not doing great at the moment because I still love you.
I mentioned before there to Josh that I feel like his inexperience is being overplayed, and what I mean by that is I think we've completely disregarded his time in charge of Real Sociedad B, because in our heads it's a reserve team and that footy doesn't matter. But I think a lot of people either forget or don't realise that they play in proper leagues in Spain, do you know what I mean? And so that's taking charge of a team. He's managed them in the third tier. He gets them promoted with kids, basically, and gets them promoted to the second tier. Yeah, they struggle in that, but we've seen whenever Liverpool have entered the Checker Trade or the Papa John's or whatever it's called, how young players, as talented as they are at Liverpool, playing against men, will sort of struggle. So I don't think you can discount that period. I think that's proper managerial experience, because he's managing a young team. It might be a second team, but in the third tier of Spanish football, and gets them promoted against men's sides in Spain, which must have took some doing. And then everything he's done at Germany, and I think he's building very quickly a really impressive CV, and whether that's the right person for Liverpool, we'll sort of wait and see, really. But I think he is ready if they decide he's the one.
But I think he might not decide he's ready, because I think the really interesting thing about Sociedad B was he could have got almost certainly any Bundesliga, La Liga or bottom half Premier League club, and he doesn't. He goes into Sociedad B for an extended period of time, and I think it is important to count it as part of that. But I think the idea that Alonso will definitely want it right now this summer, I think is being slightly overstated. I think there's every chance he will say, because he's now almost certainly going to get it, I would like a season in the Champions League with Leverkusen. I'd like to experience that, because I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in no rush. and precisely what our move is then if we've gone all in for Alonso, I think is difficult. I take some of Josh's points. I think there's a lot to be said for managers who've managed massive, stressful, emotionally mad clubs. So whilst Postecoglou doesn't do brilliantly in Europe, I think having lived Celtic is actually valuable. I think having lived Benfica is valuable, because it's actually difficult these days. I did the thing with Rory recently where we talked about, in 04-05, Benitez, Mourinho and Deschamps were all the coming men. Everyone knew who they were. There was no surprises. You were picking one of them, and there was a good reason to. Whereas now, you sort of struggle with managers. There's not many managers of that ilk because of the stratification of the way in which European football operates. There's not a Porto winning the UEFA Cup one season and going on and winning the Champions League the next. There's not a Valencia really, although the Girona chap's been talked about, but there's a City Football Group problem there that Liverpool would have to engage with. But there's, there's not quite that either, or hasn't been for a while. And again, Benitez won the UEFA Cup the season before as well as winning the Liga at the same time. So I think it is trickier. And I think that the parallels may not be as many of the obvious ones as they've been in the past as people might think. All of that, said, if Alonso is, announced as Liverpool manager on the 1st of June, I'm absolutely delighted by this turn of events. I just think that there might be a couple of little slips or things to iron out along the way. I'll say it again, literally also including himself. I don't think it's necessarily completely cut and dried. He might not feel as though he's at the end of a cycle either. Because he might think I can do something special with these players next season, and if Leverkusen are making promises around player retention, then that might also appeal to him. I think it's a really interesting one, I also don't necessarily agree with Josh about the downturn. We're going at 2.2 points a game. This is a missed thing. The funny 2.3 points a game. The funny thing about the season is I'm not surprised by the number of points we've got for the quality of the squad. I think we've got about the right number of points. The surprises were top. Yeah, with that number of points, given what everyone else is capable of and where everyone else is at and what we've seen in the past, and whether or not we maintain that is the key pressure point that starts with this game against Burnley. But I'm not surprised we got out of our Champions League group. I'm not surprised we're in a League Cup final. Sorry, Europa League group. I'm not surprised we're in a League Cup final. I'm not surprised we're in the fifth round of the FA Cup. None of that's a surprise, and it's not a surprise to me we've got as many points as we've got. It genuinely isn't, because we've got a lot of good players. We've got the best goalkeeper. We've got the best range of forwards as far as I'm concerned in there as well. Virgil van Dijk, other than the weekend, has very much come back to close to his best, if not his best. Trent Alexander-Arnold's 25 years old and is the footballer he is, and the manager's performed some really solid alchemy along the way. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking the manager down in this context, but I don't believe at the minute we're not performing at a stratosphere that I cannot. It's not 26 out of 27. Yeah. We're not at a stratosphere that's incomprehensible. So I don't think, we've got a big budget, we've got a big wage budget, we've got money to spend. We're the 7th richest club according to the list. Yes, a lot of the top 20 richest clubs are in our league, and that does make it harder. But I'm not. The next manager's not getting some sort of, even if Xabi Alonso, even if it's my dad, not getting some sort of pass for underperforming after 6 months or something like that. That's not to say that I'm going to be on anyone's back, and patience is important. But let's be clear about this. Whoever comes in is not taking over Liverpool 2015. Yeah. It's taking over Liverpool now. And we've been built by a brilliant man in conjunction with other brilliant men who pulled this together and done ever so well. That's who's built us. Whoever's taking it over is lucky to get it.
I can't believe we're making an Eddie Atkinson out banner, but we are where we are.
That's where we've got to. Wait for too long.
That's where we've got to. 500 to 1 if ever you can get it for. Decent odds. So yeah, loads of stuff on the new manager as well. Neil and Josh have just recorded something, and we'll be recording something over the next few weeks or so for our video subscribers, profiling some of these managerial targets. There'll always be some managerial gutters hosted by Rob Gutman. So I mean, yeah, we'll see where they go. But Neil's got him tomorrow, so he'll be at the reins as best as anyone can be. There you are. And yeah, as I say, we'll be looking at all these managerial options over the next few weeks for our subscribers. So make sure again you download the Anfield Wrap and subscribe. But we do want to do a big thank you to NordVPN, who are partnering with us for these series of videos, talking about videos across February. There are loads of benefits of a VPN service and many reasons why Nord is the best one, from speed to internet security. But this week, we're going to focus on the ability to watch TV in different countries, wherever you are in the world, Neil, which could be useful for sports fans
Yeah.
this weekend, who maybe their team in red isn't on telly in the UK, but
Who's to say?
is apparently on telly elsewhere. I mean, we did a show about this on Monday. Funnily enough, it's a hot topic. People have got things to say, but it is not on telly in the UK, a certain game on Saturday, but it is, and something like NordVPN can maybe help you watch it.
It can, absolutely. People can, they can make some choices. They can check out, I don't know, the excellent work of Jim Beglin, and so on and so forth. Options are available to people in the 21st century, whether or not Rule 45, is it 45?
Don't know.
Likes it or not.
I mean, it does work the other way, and personally, I'm just made up that when we go over to America, I can watch Gladiators, stay in touch with that, because it's all my lads talking about. To be honest with you, I don't want to get home, and he's like, "Did you watch Gladiators, Dad?" And I'm like, "No," and he's like,
Who's this loser?
What are we going to talk about? So the fact that you can still keep in touch with your favourite programmes where you live when you're abroad as well, that's important.
I was getting my pre-tour practice in for that as well. I was watching Gladiators in the pub on Saturday, so I'm excited. I'm excited to be doing the same thing again.
The boozers, are they?
Yeah, they had it on the booze. It was absolutely unreal. Yeah, so they had Villa Sheffield on and then Gladiators on. And I was like, this is absolutely perfect. So yeah, perfect Saturday night. And Craig has asked us to give a shout out to the tour as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's the AnfieldWrap.com/tour live. I'll go through the dates just quickly. We're going to be in New York on Wednesday, March the 20th, Boston on Thursday, March the 21st, Toronto on Friday, March the 22nd, Detroit, it's a lot of dates, isn't it? On Saturday, March the 23rd, Wilmington, Delaware on Sunday, March the 24th. I'm particularly looking forward to that. And Anfield Wrap live in Washington, DC to end the tour on Monday, March the 25th. And the only other bit of admin, John, is that Ben Mullane asks, is this going to be the regular 12 p.m. slot back every day? He's wrong on that, but he is right that it's going to be every week, I think.
Well, weekly throughout February, yeah. We're going to take next week off because there's a lot going on, but the next 2 weeks after that in February, we are going to be doing it with Nord. And who knows, after that, but we are partnering with Nord on this, so we do thank them. And if you want an exclusive NordVPN deal, go to nordvpn.com/TAW, nordvpn.com/TAW. Hopefully that's flashed up. It'll be in the blurb as well. It's risk-free as well. There's the 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you're not seeing the benefits from it, they're that confident that you will be. They give you the money back. But anyway, let's go for the questions. Have you found some?
No, so there's not really been very many. It's more just been sort of reaction to the chat.
It's getting back into it for everyone, isn't it?
We're all warming up.
Do you know what I mean?
The only thing there was one about Klopp before.
We can have some reactions. I can react to reactions. I've done that before.
So there's one which says, do you think Klopp mistakes are one, he was great at applying gegenpressing and he got rid of it to keep possession of the ball, and that did not work with Liverpool? So basically, do you think Klopp got rid of gegenpressing too quickly and went to possession football?
No, I don't think. I think it was. There's a really interesting thing where I think Guardiola and Klopp in a number of ways got closer together for a period, and I think Guardiola sort of moved on to something else a little bit faster than Klopp did, and Klopp's then I think took this season a little bit of a step back because things change. One of the things that sort of keeps striking me with the Conor Bradley's brilliant. So we all love Conor Bradley. We can see he's brilliant, great footballer, really quick, etc., etc. But there's a thing where one of the things that I think Chelsea really struggled was he just played right back like a right back. Who does that these days? That all of a sudden this thing, and he hooked the touchline, he got up and down, and Chelsea were like, so he's making the pitch massive there. They had a problem with Dizazi on the other side, so Diaz went and made the pitch massive on that side, swapping with Curtis Jones, and they just had those sorts of questions, and suddenly they couldn't cope, and it was back to Liverpool playing 2-3-5. City, I did a thing on Review Extra, City played 2-3-5 against Brentford, and we've been saying for ages, well, they took him one in because they want a bit more security, and etc., etc. And I think a lot of City's season's been that, but the last few weeks when they've been winning more and more games, they've been taking. Gvardiol was so high in that game. He basically plays like a left winger. Gvardiol, he's meant to be the left back, and that's back to tradition. He's not tucking in. He's all the way up there. So I think that there's things which I think riding the tide of what works and what doesn't is the key thing. And if there's maybe a bit of a point that Liverpool rode the tide in the wrong way here and there, I think that's a difficult thing to argue. Not least because in 2021, in 2020-2021, just for clarity, there's a massive injury crisis and midfielders are playing centre-half, and maybe the manager got that wrong in hindsight. In 22-23, there's an exhaustion crisis, and maybe the manager didn't anticipate that. But I think he kept coming back. Last season, after every game, he was like, why won't they tackle more?
Yeah.
So almost every interview post-match was, well, I don't know why they're not tackling, because they all were in training. So I think I think you can sort of think that sometimes things have changed or there's other factors. That's not to say that the manager's always got everything right and got everything perfect, and that's important to remember around the new guy as well. And also when the manager assesses himself, and this is part of the reason why he doesn't like his song being sung, is he's a bit like, they've bailed me out. That's not all me being brilliant. I think he's got a modesty around that, but I think that's the journey that they've gone on. I don't think it's ever quite as simple as one thing or anything like that.
Yeah, I think he's tried to evolve the team last year, hasn't he? And hasn't quite realised just how much the legs are going to sort of fall out of it. So it probably felt like, as fans watching, a more pronounced kind of change that it was meant to be, really. As Neil says, I don't think the intention was that they completely stopped doing a lot of the other stuff, but it just, because it came with a slight sort of evolution, and the two kind of happened more or less at the same time. It looked like we'd almost, tried to sort of stop doing that. I don't think that was the case, but listen, he's talked all season about wanting to go back to that intensity. I think we've seen loads of, evidence that sort of that is the case, really. So Liverpool being back to the tenacious best, but maybe sort of adding a little bit as well was probably what he had in mind all along.
Yeah, and I think evolution is necessary as well, because you just can't play the same way forever. And ultimately there was a point in time where Liverpool were not necessarily playing winning football under Jurgen Klopp, and now they are playing winning football under Jurgen Klopp, which is good. Dom Dewsbury asks, what does Szoboszlai do that Trent couldn't do in midfield? He doesn't see a thing that Trent can't.
I think, there's the experience of playing in the position for a start, and I think that we sometimes discount that. We can say someone has the attributes to play in a position, but there's having the attributes and there's having the know-how, and this is sort of a really basic thing, because I'm nowhere near this level of a footballer, but if ever someone asks me to go front for a bit, I just don't know where to stand. Do you know what I mean? And so because I've always played in sort of defence or defensive midfield or whatever, and so but in the wing you can sort of figure it out. Do you know what I mean? You just stand there, but if someone asks you to do something completely different, it doesn't really matter. I could have all the skill in the world, but if you don't know sort of where to where to rightly position, they're so well drilled in these presses as well, and sort of when to go. And Trent's been doing that from one position. Would he know sort of how to do that there? I think it is a little bit of, I do think he's got all the skills to play there, but whether he's quite got the know-how or the experience or the positional sense to do that, and that's not to say he couldn't develop that, because he's a very intelligent player, but whether he's got that now, and you only sort of get that over time, and so that's where the decisions sort of need to be. But it wouldn't surprise me if we saw Trent, starting the game in attacking midfield, and there was times where he looked a little bit lost, or there was times where we looked like, we weren't sort of quite as solid or whatever, because you just gain these things as a player through having played there. Do you think that's fair?
And that's fair, yeah. I think there's something else before this season, as I said, being able to play on the half turn. But I actually think that when Trent had the opportunity to this season, I think he's done it really well. Yeah. And I think he's carried the ball really well through the middle of the pitch. I think there's an all-round sort of where and why and understanding when to be intense thing that I sort of not worry about, but I think it's sort of to John's point of having a sense of when to go, and I think that can work over a period of time. I don't know if you necessarily do it now, because the pressure's on. We're not on our project. There's football matches to be won. So I think that maybe this is one that the new manager might look at in pre-season, or which might just be looked at in pre-season. Maybe they take the opportunity if Bradley's able to get back and feels he wants to play, to look at the game against Burnley, or maybe the game in the 5th round of the FA Cup, and see if there's something there that they want to push on with. And I think that's the important thing. I think you've got to see what it looks like, and at the minute we haven't quite had seeing what it looks like, and that goes for everyone, including the player himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to do one more?
We'll do one more. Joe Gomez at centre-half against Burnley. I'm asking this because I said yes to it on the free show yesterday, and I think I've talked myself out of it and into Jarell Quansah, so I'm interested to hear what you two think.
What do you think?
I'm fine with whichever way he goes. I think that Quansah's more than good enough to play against Burnley. I think he did. He played in the away game.
Yeah, and he was great.
And he was absolutely fine. And I think that Gomez, I think the most important thing is, I want to see Robertson get the hour. So if the feeling is they want Gomez to play, then obviously the opportunity then is to start at centre-half. But I want to see Robertson get the hour, because I think it's a long time not to play football, especially when you're that used to playing football, which is what Robertson's been. So for me, it's more important to start Robertson for the game against Burnley than it is anything else. And I think that not having him try to come in and get to the pace of a game, not having him come in at the same time as 4 other changes, all the obvious bits and pieces, I think giving Robertson the freedom to play. I feel a little bit like in that context, Quansah sort of maybe is just the next cab off the rank, and that he hasn't done anything wrong. But if it was Gomez, I wouldn't go this is mad, and it might be that the manager sort of wants to reward Gomez for what he's done by by using them there, but there's more than enough games coming up for everyone to get the opportunities. There's Luton, there's the League Cup final, there's the FA Cup 5th round. All of those loom large for the idea of doing a bit of rotation.
Yeah, I'd agree with Robertson. First of all, I think we really missed him against Arsenal. When Jamie Carragher did a really good analysis of what Arsenal were doing defensively, and defensively sort of high up the pitch, and how they were using this sort of, this half press kind of thing. And there was a couple of times where the ball dropped to Gomez, when I was looking at that analysis thinking, I wish we had Robertson, because he could have done a big switch, or you could just, he's used to sort of seeing more of the game where it's Gomez, being right-footed, or being a bit less experienced in that particular position, got himself a little bit hurried really, and you could see there was space, and I think Robertson could have found it. So I think getting Robertson and Trent up to speed as quickly as possible before these big games, I think is crucial. So I'd probably let Gomez sit this one out, and I'd probably go for Quansah and pick the two full-backs alongside Virgil. But like Neil says, there's plenty of games coming up, and I would like a little look at Gomez as centre-half again at some point, because we've almost forgotten how good he can be there.
I think that's where I was. Yeah, there's been a lot of sort of reaction and questions about the managerial situation. We are recording a managerial gutter tomorrow, so if you're not subscribed to Anfield Wrap, if you just watch us on YouTube, usually you can subscribe to Anfield Wrap and get all of that tomorrow. And then that's everything from the comments.
Great. Just a couple of other little bits of news, just in case you haven't seen it. Liverpool play Southampton in the FA Cup. They won 3-0 last night. So
they haven't lost a game since September,
the cooking Southampton. It'll be interesting how strong he goes, of course, because it's a midweek one, and teams at the top of the Championship do often rest players in the FA Cup as well as in just a Premier League thing. They might decide that getting back into the Premier League is the most important thing, so they might rest a few. But
they might never lose again. Everyone's got to entertain this possibility.
Yeah, and also good luck to everyone in the ballot in the Carabao Cup final today. Hope you get everything you wanted from that, including the people to the left and right of me. And then, finally, just thanks a lot to NordVPN. That address again is nordvpn.com/TAW, nordvpn.com/TAW for partnering with us on these Talking Reds throughout February. So if you want to watch UK football in the UK at 3 o'clock on Saturday, or UK Gladiators elsewhere in the world on Saturday night, they've got you covered for both.
The big two.
Up the Reds.
Bring your digital life to a whole new level with NordVPN. Choose the fastest VPN on the planet and explore the internet without interruption.